I never imagined that at 62 years old, I would be driving at 11 at night through unknown streets, my hands trembling on the steering wheel and my heart pounding like it wanted to escape my chest. It all started about 3 hours ago when I passed the corporate high-rise where Samuel Thorne had worked for 25 years. The lights were off, the parking garage was empty, and a notice on the front door announced that the offices were closed for renovations starting at 6 that evening. My first reaction was that I had the wrong building. But no, there was the company's sleek logo, mocking me from the dark facade. I dialed his number with fingers that had begun to shake. "How's the project coming, my love?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual, normal, like the devoted wife I'd been for 4 decades. His answer was immediate, practiced, and perfect in its deception. "Super busy here, Rebecca. Can't talk right now. The Tokyo project has us all pushing hard. Don't wait up for me, dear." And then I heard it. Soft moans, muffled laughter, the unmistakable sound of the intimacy I thought I knew so well. My stomach lurched, but my mind, the part of me that had been dormant for years, woke up with terrifying clarity. The family GPS app, which I had insisted we install after Samuel had a small car accident last year, now became my guide to the truth. The blue dot representing his silver Mercedes-Benz S-Class was blinking in an affluent residential neighborhood about 40 minutes from our home in a section of Atlanta we had never visited together. Every mile I drove felt like I was peeling layers off my own skin, revealing something raw and painful underneath. The neighborhood was beautiful, too beautiful. Craftsman-style homes with perfectly manicured lawns, antique streetlights bathing the sidewalks in a golden glow. The kind of place where happy families lived their perfect lives. Samuel's Mercedes was parked in front of a deep cobalt blue 2-story house with hydrangeas on the porch and a wooden swing. There was a light on the second floor, shadows moving behind lace curtains that looked straight out of a decorator's magazine. I sat in my car, parked 3 houses down, watching. My mind was trying to process the scene, but it was like trying to assemble a puzzle with pieces that didn't fit. This wasn't the house of any colleague I knew. It wasn't a hotel, nor an anonymous apartment for clandestine affairs. It was a home, complete with a mailbox painted with sunflowers and a welcome mat that read, "The Hale Family." Then I saw her, a woman, not young as I had feared, but in her mid-40s, peeking out the second-floor window. Her hair was pulled up in a messy bun and she wore a blue silk robe that I recognized with a sharp stab of pain. It was identical to the one Samuel had given me for our last anniversary, only mine was a wine red. The woman looked down the street with a satisfied expression that hurt more than any gesture of passion could have. My phone vibrated. A text from Samuel. "Leaving the office now, love. Don't wait up. Grab dinner without me." The lie was so blatant, it was almost funny. Almost. I checked my watch. 11:43 p.m. How many nights had I eaten alone, slept alone, lived alone, while he built this parallel life? A boy appeared at the window next to the woman, a boy of about 10 years old, with dark wavy hair, just like Samuel's, with the same way of cocking his head when something intrigued him. The woman embraced him, and they both disappeared from my view, likely heading to bed, continuing their nightly routine in their perfect home with my husband. My husband! The words lost all meaning in that moment, floating in my mind like strange, unrecognized objects. 40 years of marriage, 2 grown children, 3 grandchildren, an entire life built on what exactly? Lies? Half-truths? A masterful performance? Physical pain arrived then. So real, I thought I was having a heart attack. I woke up in my car at 5:47 in the morning with a stiff neck and swollen eyes. The blue house was still there, proof it hadn't been a nightmare. Samuel's Mercedes was gone. I drove home on autopilot, every traffic light and curve etched into my muscle memory after decades of living in the same place. I arrived just as Samuel was walking through the front door, briefcase in one hand and a box of donuts in the other. My favorite treat. "Morning, my love," he said, kissing me on the cheek with his usual easy familiarity. I brought your favorites, the Boston creams. I know I shouldn't have worked all night, but you know how these international projects are. His performance was impeccable. If I hadn't seen what I saw, if I didn't know what I knew, I would have believed every word. I wondered how many years he'd been perfecting this theater. How thoughtful, I replied, surprised by how normal my voice sounded. Why don't you shower while I make the coffee? He nodded, humming that tune he always whistled when he was in a good mood, the same melody I'd listened to for 4 decades, not knowing it meant he had spent the night with another family. While the shower water ran, I checked his briefcase. I had perfected the art of the discreet wife, or so I thought. I found the usual work documents that looked genuine, a tablet, company pens, but there was something new too. A second phone, one I'd never seen, hidden in a compartment I didn't know existed. The screen showed several missed calls from home and a text. Daddy, don't forget my soccer game Saturday. Mommy says you promised to come. Love you. Ethan. Another woman. Called Mommy by another son of Samuel's? The frame suddenly widened and I started seeing the full picture. The frequent business trips, always 3 or 4 days. The weekends he had to work. The calls he'd answer in the yard, far from my ears. The credit card purchases that never made it home. I had been so stupid, so trusting, so blind. But no, I corrected myself. I hadn't been stupid. I had been a wife who trusted her husband. I had chosen to believe. I had chosen not to see because the alternative was unthinkable. I remembered specific moments now with painful clarity, like that time 15 years ago when I found a jeweler's receipt in his pocket. It's for my boss's secretary's birthday. You know how he is. He always sends me to do his personal shopping. And I had believed him. Or 10 years ago when our daughter Sophia told me she'd seen Dad at the upscale mall with a woman and a young child. Must be a colleague, sister, I replied, dismissing it. Dad's always helping people. Sophia was 15 years old then. The boy in the window last night would be about 10 years old. The math was cruel in its precision. I heard Samuel turn off the shower. I put everything back in place, every object exactly as I had found it. I had learned a lot about deception in the last few hours. When he emerged from the bathroom, hair damp and smelling of the cologne I faithfully bought him every Christmas, I had the coffee poured and the donuts on a plate. Sleep well? He asked, biting into a donut while reading the news on his iPad. Like always, I lied, finding that the false words came easier than I had imagined. And did you get any rest at the office? Slept a couple of hours on the sofa in the conference room, he replied without looking up. Gerald was snoring like a bear in the next office. Gerald. I remembered. That Gerald, his supposed partner on late-night projects, had retired 6 months ago. We had celebrated with a dinner where Samuel gave a moving speech about teamwork and loyalty. The irony made me nauseous. Rebecca, are you all right? You look pale, Samuel said, touching my forehead with concern that seemed genuine. I waited 3 days before going back. 3 days in which I perfected my own performance. Smiling at the right moments, responding to his lies with expected credulity, even making love to him one night while imagining the other woman in my place. Samuel suspected nothing. After all, I had been predictable for 40 years. Rebecca, the devoted wife. Rebecca, the perfect mother. Rebecca, the fool. This time, I was prepared. I dressed in clothes I wouldn't normally wear. Jeans and a hooded sweatshirt I'd bought with cash. Big sunglasses. My hair tucked under a baseball cap. I looked like another person. And perhaps I was. The old Rebecca had died in that car 3 nights ago. I arrived at the blue house at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, when Samuel was definitely at his office. The real one this time. I had checked by calling his direct extension. The neighborhood was quiet. Only the occasional sound of a barking dog or a landscaper working. I parked on the same street, but closer this time. I needed to see. I needed to understand. The woman, Vanessa, came out at 2:30, and my heart almost stopped. Not because of her, but because of what she carried. A baby. In a front carrier? A baby who couldn't be more than 6 months old. The mathematics of betrayal suddenly became more complex. It wasn't just the 10-year-old boy. So Samuel had been building this family for how long? I followed her on foot when she started walking through the neighborhood. I kept a careful distance, pretending to look at my phone when she stopped. I watched her enter an artisanal coffee shop, one of those cozy places with sidewalk tables and hanging plants. I sat at a table far away, ordering a coffee I had no intention of drinking. She met two other women, both with babies. I listened to them talk about mundane things, diapers, sleepless nights, the exhaustion of motherhood. And then one of them said something that chilled my blood. "Vanessa, you are so lucky Daniel is so involved. Not all husbands are that dedicated." Daniel? My Samuel was Daniel in this life? Vanessa laughed, adjusting the baby in her arms. "Yes, though with his work schedule, it's complicated. He sometimes has to travel for business 3 or 4 days, but he always makes up for it when he gets back. He's a wonderful father." The business trips? Those 3 or 4 days were when he came back to me, to his other life, to his other adult children. We were shifts on his elaborate calendar of deceit. I wondered if he had a spreadsheet somewhere coordinating his lies, making sure he didn't mix up names, dates, or stories. "And how is Ethan doing with the new baby?" another woman asked. "Jealous at first," Vanessa replied. "But Daniel, my husband, has been incredible managing the situation. He bought him a new baseball glove, and they spend Saturday afternoons together while I rest with the baby." Saturday afternoons? The Saturday work seminars that Samuel never missed? Another puzzle piece fitting into place with nauseating precision? I got up to leave, but then Vanessa took out her phone to show photos. I couldn't help but glance as I passed her table. There was Samuel, my Samuel, in a family photo on a beach in Turks and Caicos, tanned, smiling, carrying the boy on his shoulders, while Vanessa, pregnant in the photo, smiled beside him. I recognized the resort. It was the same one where Samuel had had a crucial corporate retreat the previous year. I stumbled out of the coffee shop. On the way back to my car, I passed a park where several children were playing. I stopped dead when I heard a familiar voice. "That's it, champ. Kick harder." It was Samuel. My Samuel, who was supposed to be in a meeting with Japanese investors, coaching a youth soccer team. Ethan, the boy from the window, ran towards him with a smile that was a mirror of his father's. I watched him for 20 minutes, this man I thought I knew better than myself. I saw him be the father he had been with our children when they were small, but with an energy, a presence that was painfully familiar, yet strangely alien at the same time. This wasn't acting, it was genuine. It was a father loving his son, a man in his element. Who was the real Samuel then? The man who ate breakfast with me every morning? Or the one who coached soccer on Wednesday afternoons? The one who made love to me on Sunday mornings? Or the one who took another family to the beach? Did a real Samuel even exist? Or just carefully crafted versions for each audience? My phone rang. It was him. "Hey, love, meeting finished early. Do you want me to pick something up for dinner?" I looked across the park where he was still shouting instructions to the team. "That would be perfect, darling. Bring some wine. That Napa Valley Cabernet we like." "I know the one." "I love you, Rebecca." "I love you too," I replied, the words turning to ash in my mouth. That night, as Samuel slept peacefully beside me, his breathing quiet like someone without guilt, I got up and went to the bathroom. I looked at myself in the mirror for a long time, studying every line, every mark that time had left on my face. 62 years old, 40 of them devoted to a man who had built a double life with the precision of a Swiss watchmaker. The tears finally came, silent at first, then racking sobs that I had to muffle with a towel so I wouldn't wake him. I wasn't just weeping for the betrayal. I was weeping for the woman in the mirror. Who was I without him? Who had Rebecca been before she became Mrs. Samuel Thorne? The memories of my youth seemed to belong to another person. The girl who wanted to be a painter, who had won a scholarship to study in Paris, who had turned it down because Samuel had convinced her that starting a family was more important. The art will always be there, he'd said then, with that smile that melted my defenses. But the time for children won't. And I had believed him. I had packed away my brushes, traded canvases for diapers and galleries for parent-teacher conferences. I didn't regret my children. Sophia and Lucas were the best things in my life. But what had become of Rebecca, the artist? She had completely dissolved into Rebecca, the wife. The next day, while Samuel was at his real office, or perhaps his parallel life, I couldn't be sure anymore, I went up to the attic. There, in dust-covered boxes, I found my old art supplies. The brushes were stiff, the paints dry, but the sketches were still there, a testament to a talent I had abandoned for love, or what I had believed was love. I also found letters, photographs, and memories of our life together. Our wedding with Samuel promising before God and 200 guests that he would be faithful until death. Sophia's birth, Samuel crying as he tucked the umbilical cord. Lucas taking his first steps, Samuel filming it with that old camera he loved so much. Real moments, genuine emotions, or so I had believed. When had the lie begun? My phone rang. It was Sophia. "Mom, are you okay? I've noticed you've been acting weird lately." My daughter, always so perceptive. "I'm fine, honey, just a little tired." "Are you sure? I can stop by if you want. The kids are asking for Grandma." The kids? My grandchildren? Samuel's official grandchildren? I wondered if they knew they had an uncle and a little aunt in that blue house, siblings they would never meet. The web of lies spread like a poisonous tapestry touching innocent lives. "Sunday is better," I replied. "Dad will be home." A lie. On Sunday afternoon, Samuel had golf with clients. Now I knew it was likely family time at the blue house. After hanging up, I returned to my investigation. The bank statements I had ignored for years now made sense. Regular transfers to an account I didn't recognize, purchases at stores we never frequented, medical expenses that didn't match any of our illnesses. Samuel had been maintaining 2 homes, 2 complete lives, and I had been too trusting, too comfortable in my ignorance to notice. I found invoices for private academy tuition, music classes, and summer camps. Ethan played the violin. The baby, whose name I still didn't know, had been born at Emory University Hospital, the same one where our children were born. The audacity of the deception was almost admirable in its brazenness. That afternoon, I did something I had never done. I hired a private investigator, a discreet man recommended by a friend who had gone through a difficult divorce. "I need to know everything," I told him. "How long? How did it start? Everything." "Are you sure you want to know everything?" he asked, his voice heavy with experience in shattering lives with the truth. "Yes," I replied, though I wasn't sure of anything except that I couldn't keep living in this play. Samuel came home that night with flowers. Calla lilies, my favorite, or the favorites of the Rebecca he thought I was. I no longer knew what I genuinely liked, what preferences were mine, and which ones I had adopted to please him. "You're radiant lately," he said during dinner, taking my hand. The private investigator, a man named Detective Harlan, with tired eyes that had seen too many secrets, came to the house a week later. Samuel was on one of his business trips, that is, playing happy family in the blue house. Harlan laid a folder on my dining room table, the same table where we had celebrated 40 Christmases, 40 birthdays, a lifetime of lies. "Mrs. Thorne," he warned, his voice professionally compassionate, "what I'm about to show you is not easy to digest. Are you sure you want to continue?" I nodded, my hands trembling, as I opened the folder. The first page was a marriage certificate. Daniel Hale married Vanessa Hale 12 years ago. Marriage, not an affair, not a mistress, but another wife. "But this is illegal," I stammered, my mind struggling to process the information. "Technically, yes," Harlan replied. "He used false documents, an alternate identity he has perfectly maintained for years. Samuel Thorne and Daniel Hale are the same person, but legally they exist as two different individuals. It's a professional job, ma'am. Your husband is no amateur at this." The following pages were worse. Photographs of Samuel and Vanessa's wedding, an intimate ceremony on a beach. She was in a simple white linen dress, he with that smile I thought I knew so well. Birth certificates. Daniel Hale, born 11 years ago, 3 months after Samuel had an emergency medical conference in San Diego. Luna Hale, the baby, born 7 months when Samuel was on a corporate leadership retreat. "There's more," Harlan said, moving to another section. "Your husband owns properties under his alternate identity. The house where the other family lives, a condo in Miami, a cabin in the Smoky Mountains, all paid for in cash with no suspicious mortgages. My inheritance, my mother's inheritance, which she had left me 15 years ago, a considerable sum that Samuel had wisely invested for our retirement. Now I knew where that money had truly gone. He had funded his other life with my dead mother's money. How is this possible?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "How can someone live like this for so long?" Harlan shrugged. "I've seen similar cases, though none so elaborate. Your husband manages 2 businesses, one under each name. The second is a consulting firm that justifies his additional income and absences. It's brilliant in a twisted way." I continued reading school records for Ethan, an excellent student, captain of the youth soccer team, medical reports for Vanessa, fertility treatments Samuel had paid for years before she could conceive. They had struggled to have children, just like us at first. The irony was venomous. "There's one more thing you should know," Harlan said, clearly uncomfortable. "The other woman, Vanessa, she doesn't know about you. To her, her husband is a widower. The story he told her is that his first wife, Rebecca, died in a car accident 15 years ago. I was dead. In Samuel's narrative for his other family, I was dead. He had metaphorically killed his wife so he could have another. I wondered if he ever thought of the dead wife sleeping in another house, in another life, while he made love to Vanessa. Is there anything about why?" I asked, needing to understand the motivation behind such elaboration. Harlan pulled out another file. "I discreetly interviewed some acquaintances from both circles. Apparently, your husband met Vanessa when she was his physical therapist after his knee surgery." The knee surgery. I remembered those months perfectly. Samuel complaining of pain, going to therapy 3 times a week, slowly recovering. I had been busy caring for my sick mother then, trusting him to follow his treatment alone. He had planted the seeds of his other life while I held my dying mother's hand. "Vanessa became pregnant shortly after," Harlan continued. "Based on the dates, it seems your husband decided to maintain both lives instead of choosing. Maybe because of the children, maybe because of the finances, maybe because he could. The financial documents suggest he handles nearly $3 million in assets between both identities. $3 million. Money I had inherited, earned, stolen, perhaps to maintain his empire of lies." I stood up abruptly, running to the bathroom where I vomited until there was nothing left but bile. Harlan waited patiently, professionally, until the end. "What do you want to do with this information?" he asked when I returned. "I need time to think. Can you get me more information about his finances?" "Everything. Every account, every investment, every single cent." "Of course. Are you considering a divorce?" "I'm considering justice," I replied, surprised by the coldness of my voice. I spent the next 3 days in a hotel, telling Samuel I was visiting my sister in Chicago. I needed space to think, to plan, to decide who Rebecca would be after this. In the solitude of that impersonal room, with Harlan's folders spread across the bed like evidence of a crime, I made the decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to be a victim. I wasn't going to cry silently while Samuel continued his double life. I wasn't going to disappear discreetly with a silent divorce that allowed him to keep his facade. I was going to systematically destroy the house of cards he had built, but I would do it with a surgeon's precision, not a scorned wife's fury. First, I needed allies. I called Lucas, my son, who was a corporate law attorney. Son, I need your professional help with something delicate. Can you come to the Marriott Marquis downtown, room 512? Lucas arrived in an hour, worried. Mom, what's wrong? Why are you in a hotel? I showed him everything. I watched his face transformed from confusion to disbelief, then to a cold rage that I recognized as my own. I'm going to destroy him, he finally said, his voice lethal. Bigamy is a felony. Fraud, tax evasion, document forgery. I didn't interrupt. I don't want him to go to jail. I want something worse. I want him to lose everything he values, but have to live to see it. Lucas looked at me with new admiration. What do you have in mind? I laid out my plan. It was complex. It required patience, acting, and a cruelty I didn't know I possessed. Lucas listened occasionally, suggesting improvements, legal refinements that would make everything airtight. We'll need Sophia too, he said. She handles public relations for that big firm. She'll know how to manage the media aspect when everything explodes. Sophia reacted differently. She cried for an hour, then became enraged, then cried again. How could he? She repeated. How could he do this to us? But when she calmed down, her strategic mind took control. We need to control the narrative. When this comes out, and it will come out, we need Dad to be the undisputed villain. I also needed an unexpected ally. I called Samuel's sister, Margaret, with whom I had always had a good relationship. Margaret listened in silence as I told her everything. Then she sighed deeply. I always knew something wasn't right, she admitted. The trips, the excuses, the way sometimes he got details confused. I thought it was an affair. I never imagined this. I need access to your mother's safe deposit box, I told her. Margaret was the executor of my mother-in-law's will. Samuel keeps important documents there. Rebecca, Margaret said after a pause, Mom always loved you more than him. She used to say you were too good for Samuel. You'll have what you need. The plan took shape over the next few weeks. I hired a second investigator, this one specializing in financial fraud. He discovered that Samuel had been systematically evading taxes using his double identity to conceal income. A forensic accountant traced every transaction, building a case that would make the IRS tremble. Lucas prepared legal documents not for an immediate divorce, but to freeze assets at the precise moment. Sophia cultivated contacts in the media, preparing them for the story of the year. Prominent businessman living double life for a decade. I returned home to my role as the devoted wife. Samuel suspected nothing. Why would he? He had maintained his deception for so long that arrogance had made him careless. He kissed me every morning, called me from his office every afternoon, and we made love with an enthusiasm from me that surprised him pleasantly. One night while we were having dinner, he spoke to me about the future. I've been thinking about retirement. Maybe in a few years we could travel, see the world like we always wanted. That sounds wonderful, I replied, pouring him more wine. Where would you go first? Italy, maybe, or Greece. Places with history, with art. I know how much you love art. The art I gave up for you, I thought, smiling. It would be perfect. He continued talking about his dreams, our supposed plans together, unaware that I was counting the days until his destruction. The next 6 weeks were a masterpiece of performance. I became the most perfect wife Samuel had had in years. I cooked his favorite dishes. I waited up for him, no matter how late he worked. I initiated sex with an enthusiasm that delighted him. I was the Rebecca of our honeymoon, but with a dark purpose he couldn't imagine. You're radiant lately, he told me one morning, hugging me from behind while I made coffee. What's changed? I decided to value what we have, I replied, my voice poisoned. Honey, life is short, don't you think? Meanwhile, the pieces of the plan moved like clockwork. Lucas discovered that Samuel's consulting firm, as Daniel Hale, had won several government contracts using insider information obtained from his identity as Samuel Torn. It was corporate fraud on a grand scale. Sophia had planted seeds on social media, anonymous accounts that began asking questions about the mysterious Daniel Hale and his resemblance to Samuel Torn. Nothing accusatory yet, just enough to create buzz. The financial investigator found the grand prize, a Cayman Islands account with $5 million, money Samuel had been diverting for years. It was our money, money from my mother's inheritance, money from joint investments, all hidden for his eventual escape, perhaps. But the masterstroke came from Margaret. In her mother's safe deposit box, she found the real will of my father-in-law, not the version Samuel had submitted. In the original, everything was left in a trust for the grandchildren with Rebecca, me, as the administrator. Samuel had forged documents to inherit everything alone. Another federal crime. One afternoon, I followed Samuel to the Blue House. This time, I didn't hide. I parked right out front and waited. I watched him get out of the car, but not the Samuel I knew. This man walked differently, more relaxed, somehow younger. Ethan ran into his arms, and Samuel lifted him, spinning him in the air while the boy laughed. Vanessa came out with the baby, and the scene was so domestic, so perfect, that I finally understood Samuel wasn't acting there. That was his real life. I was the obligation, the youthful mistake he couldn't correct. This family was what he truly wanted. The knowledge didn't hurt as I expected. Instead, it gave me clarity. I wasn't destroying a marriage. I was exposing a lie. It wasn't revenge. It was justice. That night, Samuel came home late, smelling of baby powder and with a smudge of marinara sauce on his sleeve, probably from dinner with his other family. "Sorry I'm late," he said, kissing me distractedly. "The meeting ran long." "No problem," I replied, noticing the child's drawing sticking out of his briefcase. "Did you eat?" "Grab something at the office," he lied easily, "but I'd love a glass of wine with you." We sat on the sofa, him talking about his fictitious day, while I nodded at the appropriate moments. At one point, he rested his head in my lap, an intimate gesture from our early years. "You're radiant lately," he told me one morning, hugging me from behind while I made coffee. "What's changed?" "I decided to value what we have," I replied, my voice poisoned. "Honey, life is short, don't you think?" Lucas called me the next day. "Everything's ready. The documents are prepared. Sophia's contacts are waiting. The IRS has been anonymously informed. We're just waiting for your signal." Friday, I decided during the anniversary dinner. Our 40th anniversary was in 2 weeks. Samuel had reserved the most exclusive restaurant in the city. He had invited our closest friends and family. It would be public. It would be devastating. It would be perfect. The restaurant, the Gilded Lily, shimmered like a jewel in the city night. Samuel had reserved the entire main hall, an extravagant gesture even for him. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over Egyptian linen tablecloths, each table adorned with white orchids and red roses, the colors of my wedding bouquet 40 years ago. A string quartet played "Our Love Is Here to Stay," the song from our first dance. Every detail had been meticulously planned, a public masterpiece of romance that concealed private rot. I wore the blood-red dress I had bought specifically for this night, a daring design that hugged my figure with a neckline Samuel would have considered inappropriate just a few months ago. My hair was styled in an elegant updo that revealed the diamond necklace my mother had left me, the one Samuel didn't know I had retrieved from the safe deposit box. The makeup was dramatic, red lipstick, smoky eyes, a mask of war disguised as glamour. Every guest who arrived commented on how radiant I looked, never suspecting that my glow was that of a freshly sharpened blade. Samuel wore his Italian tailor-made navy blue suit, the one he wore for the most important occasions, the silk tie I had given him for our 30th anniversary. His gold cufflinks, his father's inheritance, sparkled when he moved his hands to greet guests. He had gone to the barber that afternoon, his silver hair perfectly trimmed, his beard neatly sculpted. He looked exactly what he pretended to be, a successful man celebrating a life of love and fidelity. "You are absolutely spectacular," he whispered, helping me with my chair at the head table. His hand brushed my bare shoulder, an intimate gesture for the public. "I can't believe you still take my breath away after all these years. You are the most beautiful woman in the room." "And you the biggest liar," I thought. But my smile was perfect, trained over weeks of practice in front of the mirror. "You're not so bad yourself, my love," I replied, the term of endearment burning my tongue like acid. The 50 guests were a careful selection from our life. Samuel's business partners who needed to witness his downfall, society friends who would spread the scandal like wildfire, and family who deserved to know the truth. They were strategically placed. Lucas and his wife Elena near the improvised stage, ready to intervene. Sophia and her fiancé David at a table with a perfect view of the projection screen. Margaret strategically located near the exit in case Samuel tried to run. Dinner began with oysters, which Samuel detested, but had ordered because he knew they were my favorite, another public gesture of devotion. Conversations flowed with the French champagne, Dom Perignon, from the year of our wedding, a detail that had cost a fortune and which Samuel had boasted about at least 3 times. "Samuel has always been the perfect husband," commented Carla Simmons, the wife of Samuel's main partner, as she savored her lobster. "Rebecca, you are so fortunate. You have no idea," I replied, my smile unwavering. Samuel, sitting next to me, squeezed my hand under the table, a gesture others interpreted as love, but which I recognized as ownership. At 9:30, as the Belgian chocolate desserts were served, Samuel stood up, gently tapping his glass with a knife. The quartet stopped playing, conversation ceased, and all eyes turned to him. "Dear friends, family," he began, his voice rich and deep, the voice he had seduced me 4 decades ago. 40 years ago, in a small bookstore downtown, I met a woman who would change my life. Rebecca became not only my wife, but my best friend, my confidant, my partner in every adventure. I watched as some women discreetly dabbed tears. Carla sighed romantically, the men nodded approvingly. It was a masterful performance. "These years haven't always been easy," Samuel continued, his voice trembling with feigned or perhaps perversely real emotion. "We faced loss, challenges, moments of doubt. But Rebecca, my Rebecca, has been my anchor, my safe harbor in every storm, the light that guides me home every night." The irony was so bitter that I had to take a sip of water to avoid choking. Every night he was supposedly guided home, he chose another direction, another home, another woman. "That's why Samuel pulled a blue velvet box from his pocket. "I want to renew my vows right here in front of all of you." He opened the box, revealing an eternity diamond band. "Rebecca, will you do me the honor of continuing to be my wife for another 40 years? Applause erupted. Someone shouted, "Bravo!" Phone cameras flashed. It was the perfect moment, the romantic climax of the evening. I stood up slowly, accepting his kiss before the ovation, the ring heavy and cold on my finger. "My turn," I announced, as the applause died down, my voice clear as the crystal I was about to shatter. 40 years is a long time, time enough to know every secret, every truth, every lie about a person, or so one would think. Samuel smiled, his hand still on my waist, utterly oblivious to the chasm opening beneath his feet. "I've prepared something very special for tonight," I continued, pulling my phone from my purse. Lucas had already connected the restaurant's audio and projection system to my device, an arrangement that had cost a generous tip to the technical staff. A gift not just for my husband, but for all of you. Because ruby anniversaries, dear friends, require absolute transparency like the purest crystal. I pressed play. Samuel's voice filled the room, clear and unmistakable. "Vanessa, my love, I'm heading home now. Yeah, I know. Ethan has his game tomorrow at 8. Don't worry, I told Rebecca I have a conference all weekend. She never suspects anything. Trust me, after so many years, she's blindly trusting. It's almost pathetic how easy it is." The silence that followed was absolute, the kind of silence that precedes an explosion. Samuel's champagne glass fell from his hand, shattering against the marble floor into 1,000 pieces that reflected the light like crystal tears. That's not," he started, his face going from tan to white to gray in seconds. "Oh, but wait," I interrupted, my voice now sharp as the broken glass at his feet. "Oh, there's so much more. The screen came to life with the photographs I had meticulously prepared. Samuel and Vanessa at their beach wedding. Him in a white linen suit I had never seen. The birth certificate for Ethan Hale with Daniel Hale listed as the father. Christmas family photos from the last 10 years. Samuel smiling with his other family in front of a tree I had never decorated. Luna's ultrasound with a dedication to the best dad in the world. Love, Vanessa. Gasps started like waves, each revelation provoking a new round of shock. Carla Simmond had gone pale, her hand covering her mouth. Samuel's partner, Gerald Brooks, stared at the images with a mixture of horror and fury, probably calculating the damage to the firm's reputation. Margaret buried her face in her hands, sobbing silently. 40 years, I said, walking slowly around Samuel, who remained frozen like a statue. 40 years living with a bigamist, a pathological liar, a criminal. Yes, dear friends, a criminal. Bigamy is a felony, punishable by prison time. Rebecca, please. Samuel finally found his voice, stepping toward me with outstretched hands. We can talk about this privately. Don't do this. Lucas stood up, interposing himself between his father and me. Don't come near my mother. His voice was lethal, controlled. And before you consider running, you should know that the IRS already has copies of all your financial statements, including that Cayman Islands account where you hid $5 million. The prosecutor has the fraudulent contracts you signed using your fake identity. Sophia took the microphone the quartet had abandoned. To our dear guests, I deeply regret that you are witnessing this, but after 40 years of public deception, we felt the truth also needed to be public. My father not only betrayed my mother, he betrayed us all. This is insane. Samuel spun around, looking for support among the guests, but they were all backing away as if he were contagious. Gerald, you've known me for 20 years. You know I wouldn't. Wouldn't what? Gerald, his best friend, stood up, his face a mask of disgust. That you aren't capable of this? Apparently, I didn't know you at all. I pulled the envelope from my purse, the divorce papers Lucas had prepared. You have two choices, Samuel. Sign these documents now, relinquishing all claims to our communal assets, or this goes to a public trial and you end up in federal prison for bigamy, tax fraud, and document forgery. Margaret stood up then, her voice trembling but firm. Samuel, you should also know that I found Dad's real will. The one you forged is with the authorities. Mom always knew something wasn't right with you. It was the final blow. Samuel slumped into the chair, the powerful man reduced to rubble. With trembling hands, he took the pen I offered him. As he signed, tears fell onto the documents, staining his name, his final surrender. The events following the anniversary dinner unfolded like perfectly aligned dominoes, each one toppling the next with devastating precision. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the balcony of the hotel suite where I had taken refuge, watching the city lights flicker while my phone vibrated incessantly with calls and messages I wouldn't answer. The red dress still clung to my body like battle armor, the smeared makeup tracing maps of pain on my face. At 6 a.m, Lucas arrived with coffee and his laptop. The divorce papers are processed. Dad signed them last night. We have witnesses. It's irrevocable. We also froze the joint accounts an hour ago. His efficiency was ruthless, the lawyer taking control where the son might have faltered. At 7 a.m, Sophia arrived with her crisis public relations team, 3 young women with tablets and determined expressions who transformed my suite into a command center. The press embargo lifts in 2 hours, Sophia announced, her professionalism barely hiding the fury burning underneath. We have exclusives with 3 major newspapers and 2 national television channels. The hashtag is already trending. By noon, the entire country knew who Samuel Thorne really was. At exactly 9 a.m, the story exploded. Prominent businessmen living double life, bigamy, fraud, and 12 years of deception. Headlines screamed from every screen. The bigamist of the year became a worldwide trend in minutes. The photos I had provided, Samuel with both families, went viral. Cruel but creative, memes flourished like mushrooms after the rain. The hotel phone rang. It was the front desk. Mrs. Thorne, there are reporters in the lobby requesting statements. Tell them my lawyer will give a press conference at 2 in the afternoon, I replied, my voice surprisingly firm. By 11 in the morning, Samuel's company had issued a statement. Effective immediately, Samuel Thorne has been suspended from all duties, pending an internal investigation into severe ethical violations and possible corporate fraud. Gerald Brooks, his partner, was more direct in his interview. We are fully cooperating with the authorities. If the allegations are true, Samuel Thorne not only betrayed his family, but also the trust of his partners, employees, and clients. At 3:47 p.m., my phone rang from an unknown number. It was Vanessa. Her voice sounded like shattered glass, every word fragmented and cutting. "Is it true?" she asked without preamble. "You are Rebecca Thorne, his first and only legal wife," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. No cruelty, but no comfort. "I never died, Vanessa. He killed me, metaphorically, so he could have you. I'm sorry. You are a victim in this too." "The children," her voice broke into sobs. "My God, the children. Ethan adored his father. The baby. What do I tell them? How do I explain that their entire life is a lie?" "I don't know," I admitted, because there were no words of comfort that could heal those wounds. But children are resilient. With help, with therapy, with real love, they will heal. "Did you know about us?" she asked. "How long did you know?" 2 months, I answered. 2 months of truth after 40 years of lies. "I'm going to lose everything," she whispered. "The house is in his name, the accounts, everything. I have nothing of my own. I quit my job when Ethan was born because he insisted." It was another level of Samuel's cruelty, keeping Vanessa completely dependent. "Give me your information," I heard myself say. "My lawyer will contact you. You are not responsible for Samuel's crimes. We will make sure you and the children are financially protected." "Why?" she asked, genuinely confused. "Why would you help me?" "Because destroying Samuel doesn't mean destroying 2 innocent children," I replied. "They didn't ask to be born into a lie." The next day, the IRS arrived like a biblical plague. Federal agents appeared at Samuel's office, our house, and the Blue House. Boxes of documents were seized, computers, hard drives, even his collection of luxury watches was cataloged and embargoed. The investigation revealed a labyrinth of tax evasion dating back 15 years. Offshore accounts, shell companies, fake invoices, a scheme so elaborate that it required a team of 20 forensic accountants to completely unravel it. Gerald handled the legal aspect with a surgeon's precision and an executioner's coldness. Using the state's bigamy laws, which included the automatic nullification of any financial claim by the bigamous spouse, he voided all of Samuel's rights to our joint properties: the house, valued at $2 million, the 3 investment properties, the stock portfolio, everything passed exclusively into my name. "We also recovered this," Lucas said a week later, handing me a check. $3.7 million from the Cayman Islands account. The rest is so tangled up in his shell companies that it will take years to recover, if at all. Margaret visited me that afternoon. She had aged 10 years in a week, her face marked by family shame. "Mom always knew something was wrong with Samuel," she confessed, sitting heavily on my hotel sofa. Before she died, she told me, "Take care of Rebecca when the truth comes out." I think she somehow knew. "How is he?" I asked, hating myself for caring. "Destroyed," Margaret replied bluntly. "Vanessa threw him out of the house. No hotel in the city will accept his reservation. His face is on all the news. He's living in an extended stay America on the highway, paying in cash with what little they haven't frozen. He tried to contact some friends, but they all hung up. He's a pariah, Rebecca, a man without a country." 3 weeks after the scandal, I was called to testify before the grand jury. The room was packed, every seat taken by people eager to hear the story firsthand. I wore a simple black suit, no jewelry, except for my original wedding ring, which I wore as a reminder of the woman I used to be. For 4 hours, I recounted everything, every lie, every discovery, every piece of evidence. The jurors listened with expressions ranging from sympathy to horror. The prosecutor, a young but brilliant man named Daniel Hayes, was meticulous. Mrs. Thorne, at any point during these 12 years, did you suspect your husband's infidelity? There were moments, I admitted, small inconsistencies, strange absences, but Samuel was a master manipulator. Every time I got close to the truth, he created an explanation so elaborate, so credible, that I felt guilty for doubting. And what made you discover? I paused before answering. At first denial, then pain, a pain so deep I thought it would break me in two. After that came anger, not hot, but cold, calculated, and finally, determination. Determination that 40 years of lies would not define the rest of my life. The grand jury's verdict was unanimous. Formal indictment for bigamy, tax fraud, document forgery, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Samuel faced up to 20 years in prison. A month later, Samuel called me from the county jail, where he was awaiting trial. His voice was unrecognizable, broken, aged. Why, Rebecca? Why didn't you give me a chance to explain in private? Explain what, Samuel? How you accidentally stumbled into another life for 12 years? How you mistakenly married another woman? How you unintentionally had 2 more children? It wasn't like that. Vanessa got pregnant. I couldn't abandon her. But you could abandon me every day. For 12 years, you abandoned me. I loved you, Rebecca. I always loved you. No, I replied, with a clarity that surprised me. You loved the idea of me, the perfect wife in your perfectly compartmentalized life. But you never loved the real me, Rebecca, the woman with her own dreams and desires. You turned me into a character in your elaborate fiction. The children, his voice broke. My other kids, what will happen to them? Vanessa and I have reached an agreement. They will receive financial support from the recovered assets. They will not suffer economically for your crimes. You and Vanessa are talking? The victims of the same criminal sometimes find comfort in mutual understanding, I replied. Rebecca, please, I just want... No, Samuel, you don't have the right to want anything from me. You had 40 years of my life. You won't have another second. I hung up. It was the last time I would ever hear his voice. 2 years have passed since that anniversary dinner that changed everything. This morning, as I made coffee in my new condo kitchen, overlooking the Atlanta rooftops, with the sun streaming through windows I chose all by myself, I received a notification on my phone. Samuel had been released on good behavior. I felt nothing. No fear, no anger, not even curiosity. The man that had been my husband was a stranger now, a character in a story that happened to another Rebecca, one that no longer existed. My art exhibition opened last month. Portraits of an invented life. Each piece told a part of the story. The blind wife, the woman awakening, the architect of her own liberation. The reviews were extraordinary, but more importantly, every brushstroke had been therapy, every color a small victory over the past. At the opening, a man approached me. He was a widower, a retired literature professor with kind eyes and a genuine laugh. Your work moves me, he said. There is so much pain, but so much hope, too. We had coffee afterward, then dinner. There is no rush, no expectations, just 2 people who understand that life can begin again at any age. Lucas called me yesterday. Dad tried to contact me, he said. Does he want to reunite with the family? I asked, though I already knew the answer. I told him his family was us for 40 years. He chose another. Now he has to live with that choice. My son, my fierce protector. Sophia was less diplomatic. She simply blocked his number. Margaret visits me sometimes. She tells me that Samuel lives alone in a one-bedroom apartment. He works as a bookkeeper for a small firm that doesn't run background checks. Vanessa won't allow him to see the children until they are older and can decide for themselves. It's a gray, monotonous existence, honest for the first time in his life. But this story isn't about Samuel. It never really was. It's about Rebecca, about me, about the woman who emerged from the ashes of a false life to build a real one. Yesterday, I found my old diary from the time before Samuel. The girl who wrote those pages dreamed of Paris, of painting in Montmartre, of passion. At 64 years old, I am finally giving that girl what she deserves. Next month, I fly to Paris alone with my brushes and a light suitcase. It's not the scholarship I rejected 4 decades ago, but it's my money, my decision, my life. I'll rent a small studio near the Seine. I'll paint until my hands hurt. I'll drink cheap wine with artists who know nothing of my history. While packing, I find the photo of our wedding, Samuel and me, young, radiant, ignorant of the future. I don't rip it up. I don't burn it. I simply place it in a box labeled fiction, because that's what it was, a beautiful, terrible fiction. My phone rings. It's Victor. That's the literature professor's name, and the name no longer makes me flinch. Ready for our tango class? He asks. Yes, I'm learning tango and Italian and sculpting and wine tasting. Something new every day, every experience, an affirmation that life doesn't end with betrayal, that it isn't the end, but a new beginning. Give me 10 minutes, I reply, applying the red lipstick Samuel said was too bold for my age. Everything is bold now. Every day is an act of bravery. Every decision a declaration of independence. Before leaving, I look at myself in the mirror. The woman looking back has wrinkles that tell stories, gray hairs she doesn't hide, eyes that have seen too much but still shine with hope. She is beautiful, not despite her age and history, but because of them. Hello, Rebecca, I say to my reflection. It's good to finally meet you. And then there's one final twist to this story, one I didn't see coming. This morning, while organizing papers from my trip, I found an envelope that Detective Harlan, the investigator, had left. Open it only when you are ready, he had said. Inside was a letter from my mother, written shortly before she died. A letter Samuel had intercepted and hidden. My dearest Rebecca, it read, if you are reading this, it is because you have finally set yourself free. I always knew the truth about Samuel. I followed him once. I saw the other woman. But you were so fragile after losing that pregnancy, so dependent on him that I feared the truth would destroy you. I was a coward. I am sorry. In compensation, I have left another account, one Samuel does not know about, just for you. The key is where we always hid treasures when you were a child, the old oak tree in my childhood garden. Live, my love, live truly this time. I rushed to the house, now sold, but whose new owners allowed me to search, and buried among the roots was a metal box. Inside, documents for a Swiss account with enough money to live 100 lives. My mother had given me freedom, posthumously, not just financial, but emotional. She knew. Someone had known and had chosen to protect me until I was strong enough to protect myself. I didn't need the money anymore, but I would use it for a women's shelter, for art scholarships, for all the Rebeccas trapped in gilded cages. My story ends where it began, with a discovery, a revelation, a truth that changes everything. But this time, the truth does not destroy, it liberates. And I, Rebecca Thorne, at 64 years old, am finally free.